على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We spoke a little bit about the essence of ta'awudh, what it actually means, what are we doing when we say a'udhu. Taking protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hiding, getting refuge from our enemy, and holding on to the one who is going to protect us. And we mentioned that isti'adha, or taking this protection, when we look at the words of the Prophet ﷺ and the acts of the Prophet ﷺ, he ﷺ would take protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I seek refuge in Allah, I seek refuge in you. These words were used. And, oh Allah, I seek refuge in, for example, in your undefeatable power, in your ability. And the other attributes, one riwayah, أعوذ بنور وجهك الكريم. I seek protection in the light of your face, the nur of your face. So these are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which are not created. All of this teaches us that we do not turn for protection towards created things. We turn towards the creator of all things. And when we say a'udhu billah, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us protection from His side for whatever it is that we need protection from. We are coming to Him with a complete sense of reliance, a complete sense of confidence and trust that, oh Allah, You are the one we are turning to, and You're the only one who can give us that protection. So this is the billahi aspect of ta'awudh. Then comes the next part, which is ash-shaytan ar-rajim, min ash-shaytan. What are we specifically seeking protection from over here? So there are different types of things that we seek protection from. There are those things that are from within us, and those things that are external. And from all of those things that are external, it could be a person, and it could be a person in the form of a jinn. It could be in the form of some other element that comes. For example, a harmful animal, an accident, or anything like that. So there are different things that we seek protection from in our daily lives. Here specifically, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us how to seek protection when reading the Quran, so we seek protection directly from ash-shaytan ar-rajim. So there are many different evils and many different things that could cause us harm, but specifically we want protection from ash-shaytan, who is ar-rajim. Why specifically? Even though we have evils within ourselves also. And there are other things that can harm us. Because if a person has had tawfiq to reach this point where they're actually about to read the Quran, it means they have defeated many of the elements and they have conquered many of the elements that would normally stop them, including their nafs, including their inner laziness, their inner desires that would push them away. But now somebody is ready to read. They have the mushaf in front of them, or they're about to read from their memory. It means they have come a long ways. Now Shaytan is going to try to use his other tactic, which is how he attacks a person after he starts a deed. The first effort of Shaytan is to stop the person from getting to the deed. The next effort of Shaytan is to now somehow attack this deed. And he attacks the deed in many different ways. One is, for example, by changing the intention of the person. At first, a person was reading for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they hear somebody else listening, so now they want to read for the sake of making somebody else happy. That's one example. Another example would be where he makes the person careless in their recitation, or the person is not paying attention anymore. Or he makes a person lose their focus in what he is saying or what she is saying when reciting the Quran. This is another way that Shaitan would attack. Another way that Shaitan would attack is by bringing such things in front of a person which would make them lose their not just focus, but lose their interest in reading. Or something else comes along, it becomes a distraction, and then all of a sudden you stop reading altogether, you get so engaged in that. And Shaytaan does this in many different ways. Remember that Shaytaan has a huge arsenal at his disposal. He can sometimes come and put whispers in our hearts. الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. He'll come and whisper directly. And sometimes he will use other people and other things to distract us. And he can do that. He can do that. He could put it in the mind of someone who has no intention to do anything, to say anything to do, but he will use them as a means of distracting you, as a means of taking you away from what you are about to do. So there are many things that Shaytaan does to attack the human being, specifically while they're reading the Quran. And another one of the most important ones, dangerous ones, is putting doubts in a person's mind about what they are reading. Is this even true or not? Did this really happen? I don't understand it. Or if this is like this, then why is like that? If this is like this, then why is the Quran saying this? Why is the Quran saying this in one place and saying that in another place? These kinds of objections that come, this is another ploy of Shaytaan he can't stop us from reading, but he can stop us from following along with the Quran and taking the message. So a person came so far, they actually started reciting, but now Shaytaan is putting a block between them and benefiting from that knowledge, benefiting from that ilm and that hidayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in this book. So these are some of the things that we are taking protection from when we say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. When we say it, we say it whenever we recite, but it's important to think about these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me protection and preparing me for a battle that is about to commence. And this battle is mentioned in numerous places in the Quran. What would happen to people when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to start reciting? What kinds of things would the disbelievers say? وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا وَجَعَلْنَا عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَنْ يَفْقَهُوا وَفِي آذَانِهِمْ وَقْرًا وَإِذَا ذَكَرْتَ رَبَّكَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَحْدَهُ وَلَّوْا عَلَىٰ أَدْبَارِهِمْ نُفُورًا. These are all responses, shaitani responses to recitation of the Quran. What it would make people, what Shaitan would make people do? Go crazy. They would go crazy. And they would become deaf, dumb and blind to it. I'm not paying attention, I'm not listening to this. And this is another thing that happens, is sometimes we're reciting the Quran, but our mind, our eyes, our ears are actually somewhere else. Something else has completely occupied us. And this is also sometimes what happens when we are hearing the recitation of the Quran. We're hearing the recitation of the Quran, but all of a sudden, it's just like a background noise. Someone is reciting the Quran, or we're listening to a recording of the Quran, and it's perfectly fine to listen to a recording of the Quran. But if we're listening to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a commandment there, a very strong commandment. وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. This Quran is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want that mercy, you better do two things. One is you better listen very, very closely. And the other thing is, don't start your own discussions, don't start your own talks. But we see this, Quran is playing in the background and people are having a chat. Sometimes we turn on the Quran in our homes, mashallah, it's beautiful. Beautiful recitation is going on. But what are we doing at that time? Oh, we're sitting down and having our tea and talking, and sometimes, aliyadu billah, Quran is playing and someone is watching something else on their phone. So these are all things that we are being alerted to, that look, when the recitation of Quran takes place, a lot of things come into movement. On one side, the angels come rushing to you, but on the other side, the system of shayateen, it gets into action to try to somehow impede, stop, block, affect, hamper, hinder this process in some way or another. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all of that. May Allah azza wa jalla give us tawfiq.
فتهدي الضياء لها